last time I was out on the BMW, I got a knock from the back end as I was riding down the M6, and sure enough, it looks as if the rear damper has failed. Very bouncy at the back end, and a distinct knock as the suspension rebounds. So time to take it apart. First thing apparently is to take off the ECU, which is under the rider's seat. It's actually held on by two rubber clips. There's a thing on the right which is just that clips onto the side of the ECU. It doesn't actually connect to it electrically, it's just a mechanical place to store it. The main connection is on the left hand side, and there's two big connectors which have a clever plastic clip which just slides out. There's a sort of thumb grip on each end of the clip, which just, that's me pushing it back in, but it just pulls out, and then the whole plug just pulls away from the ECU. So it's quite a clever arrangement really. Pulling off the other one. Just pulls straight off when you've got two hands. There we go. Nice big connectors inside, all nice and clean and dry. The plugs themselves have a blue silicone rubber seal around them, which has obviously done its job, so that's all good. I'll clean off the ECU on the outside, it's just a bit dirty, but I'm assuming it's fine. On the left side there's this little cover that covers the ride height sensor. Just pulls away at the bottom as a rubber grommet, and then a clip at the top which will just lift and pull away. There's the rod that moves the sensor up and down as the swinging arm moves up and down. No need to interfere with that at all. Back in the ECU tray, there's these two wires which are clipped to a moulding inside the tray. The connectors themselves have a small plastic attachment to them which slides on. There's a retaining clip that you can use to disconnect them and slide them off. But that little steel part inside the plastic, sort of U-clamp type thing, that pushes down onto the moulding inside the ECU tray, and it's just like a barb. It's a one-way fitment, but I've managed to prise it off. But obviously at the factory they just slide those on and they just dig into the plastic and hold in place. There's two connectors there side by side. I thought that one was for the rear suspension and the other was something else. Turns out that they're both for the rear suspension. The larger connector and the larger wire goes to the top of the ESA suspension unit, and the other connector is a thinner wire which goes down to the bottom of the suspension unit. Again, those connectors slide off. That's the U-shaped clamp with the barbed steel clip inside it, so that it slides onto the underside of the electrical connector. So having removed the bolts from the rear subframe, remove the lower bolts and slacken off the bolts at the top of the frame, and then the whole of the rear subframe will just hinge up on the bolts that you've slackened. Trouble is the rectifier is underneath the ECU tray. It's bolted on underneath the tray and has two thick cables connecting to it with plugs onto the back of actually onto the front of the rectifier box. Actually in my case I had this mud sling type thing which I discovered I needed to take off as well. So I just took the zip ties off that and took it off. That's the rectifier under there. and one of the connectors that I managed to get off with the rectifier in place, but in the end decided that the easiest thing was just to take the whole rectifier off the ECU tray, easier than getting the connectors off. So there's only two of the usual Torx screws that go up through the underside of the ECU tray into some captive nuts. So it's pretty straightforward to take that off and just pull it to one side, let the rear subframe hinge up. So there's the rectifier just loose now from the ECU tray. There's the two screws, looks like 6mm, maybe 5mm, that just go up through the rectifier itself into the captive nuts in the ECU tray. There's the two plugs on the rectifier. Again, nicely sealed with silicone rubber seals. Okay, so rear subframe lifted up. Need to attach it to something at the top to stop it flopping back down again. I just put a bungee around the top and across to the handlebars, which was fine. There's the top of the suspension unit. Obviously taking the silencer off at this stage. And there's a fairly hefty bolt through the frame to hold the top of the damper, and another one through the swing arm to hold the bottom. So it's just a question of pulling those out and releasing the whole suspension unit. So here's the thicker of the two cables removed from the wiring loom. And it's just a question of fiddling around to get it through the forward side of the ECU tray and down through and below to the suspension unit itself. Just fiddle it down. Bit of a squeeze to get the connector past the ECU tray and the frame, but not too bad with a bit of a fiddle. So that top cable comes down, goes behind the, well actually sorry, goes in front of the reservoir and the casting that goes across the top of the damper. So it goes over the top of that, back underneath it, and then it's routed round to the left of the bike and through a clip that's attached to the suspension unit, and then across to that black box, which I guess has got a stepper motor in it with ESC written on the side. So that's the routing of the top cable, the thicker of the two. You can see there I've got the rectifier tied up out of the way on the left hand side. So here's the damper out. I've taken the two bolts out and realised that there's the other wire as well. That just goes through a little grommet and a little clip that's attached to the swing arm. Then it comes up to another little clip that's on the frame. There's actually a white spot on the cable, which obviously shows the assembly guys that that's where it clips into that frame clip. And from there again it just goes up in front of the ECU tray and into the connector on top. See the suspension unit out of the way? I had one of these little sleeves on it, neoprene sleeves, because my spring was quite rusty when I bought the bike, so it was nice just to hide the rust. There's the unit with the black stepper motor assembly on the left and the reservoir. No sign of any oil leaks or anything, but clearly it had stopped working quite abruptly as well. So hopefully a second-hand replacement will get it going again. Okay, that's it. Thanks for watching.